Members of the company, this is your Places call. Places, please. Places for the top of the podcast. Places, please.
Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the glitz and not-so-glam of Broadway, education, and everyday life with Uncommon Sense. Join hosts Christopher Smith and Sharna Lopez as they bring you the best stories and shenanigans that seemingly prove how elusive common sense can really be. So take a little time for yourself to hang out with the dynamic duo Charnopher, and no leaving early, because you might just miss that 11 o'clock number.
Stand by music. Music, go.
Uncommon sense, the 11 o'clock number. And we are Charnopher.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, how's it going, Christopher?
It's going good. Another day.
We're back.
We're back.
Christopher, I'm excited for this one. If people are watching, because you are matching our logo, your purple polo.
Oh, I totally am.
Yeah.
Hello. I'm matching our logo.
I didn't get the memo. Rude.
Yesterday, when we were filming another one, I forgot to say that I was matching my cup. So if everybody goes back and watches the last episode, my shirt matched my cup again.
Oh, man.
And I have a fun cup today.
I feel like that's amazing that you put that effort in. I just, I'm like running around clearly in my bedroom putting a studio together, and this is what you get. You get a black t-shirt. So sorry, friends.
I mean, that's okay. I love a black t-shirt moment. I'm also a big fan of the black ensemble in general.
We're keeping it real,
So today I think we're going to talk about something fun.
Members of the company, this is your Places call. Places, please. Places for the top of the podcast. Places, please.
What's happening?
Sharna,
Why did you put that in there?
Did you start a new episode? What's happening?
No. Guess who's here?
Oh my gosh. Is it who I think is here?
It's Kelly Pate. Kelly Pate is here with us today live.
guys.
Our lovely voiceover, our lovely stage manager voiceover is live in her box.
In her video box. Yes, everyone.
Today.
You may have recognized her voice. And if you didn't, rewind to the beginning of the episode because you'll hear it. Okay?
She's got the best stage manager voice. I'm going to say that.
Okay.
You're welcome.
I love it. So let me tell you all a little bit about Miss Kelly Marie Pate. We met her at OSHA, but before then, we'll get to that, I guarantee. Before then, she spent nearly 20 years as a stage manager working in professional theater. And her career includes touring the first national tours of Cameron Mackintosh's Oliver, the 25th anniversary tour of Annie, South Pacific, and DreamWorks' theatrical production of Shrek, the musical. Miss Pate also served as stage manager on Cirque du Soleil's resident production of Iris, A Journey Through the World of Cinema, at the Dolby Theatre in Hollywood. Locally, she has stage managed over 20 productions at Musical Theatre West in Long Beach. Passionate about hands-on education, she implemented the first stage management production program at California School of the Arts San Gabriel Valley in Duarte, California. Miss Pate holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Musical Theater, which I did not know, from East California.
I didn't know that either.
East Carolina University. I can't. And a Master of Fine Arts in Theater Education from the University of Mississippi. Wow, I quit.
Mississippi.
University of
That's what we call it on like the down low. Mississippi. For one woman.
On the down
Only
low.
for one.
Oh man, I messed that up like all the ways. Okay.
I like it. I liked it.
Great.
It's like the remix.
Yes. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, Kelly, I love you. It's like the remix. I love it.
The remix. I'm here
Welcome,
for it.
Kelly Pate. We'll just cut to there.
Well,
There we
thank
go.
you for
Welcome,
having me.
Kelly Pate.
Wait a second. Kelly, before we even go on, I mean, we just met you not that long ago.
Yeah.
So I'll be real with our listeners. And there's something special when you meet certain people that you're like, okay, you're my person. And I know Christopher and I both felt like that immediately. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. But I also did not know a lot about your background, even just that bio. So I'm excited. You know, you get it to OSHA and you're like, I don't know, do 900 things in 3 days and go.
Yes.
And we're so busy. But I did not know that you got your degree in musical theater. And this now tracks because do you remember that one day I heard you singing in your office?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You guys, I'm going to just lead with this. I'm in my office. Kelly and I, our offices are in the same like suite at work. And I hear somebody singing songs for New World. Like
A new
a
world.
Christopher, I
good.
thought it was the recording. Like truly, Kelly.
I love that.
I'm like, who is blaring the recording? And I come out and I'm like looking around. Her office door's closed. And I'm looking and she is in her office wailing. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Who are you, you magical new friend? Her voice is stellar. Like, we're going to do a faculty follows something one day, Kelly.
We totally should. Oh, my
For
goodness.
sure. But that tracks now. Tell us about
thought
your...
I was alone.
No, never alone. Never alone.
It's like, I was like, oh, I think I lost track of time. I was stressed out. Imagine that.
Is that what you
you
did
do
growing
when
up,
you're
Kelly?
stressed out.
Theater? Musical theater?
So I did theater. I was like a chorus kid, really, for a long, long time in school. And in high school, I did a lot of musical theater, and then I went to college for musical theater. I actually started college as a vocal performance major in the School of Music. And around my sophomore year, I was like, I don't think I'm great at opera. It's not my thing. So I transferred to the School of Theater and ended up getting I was a double major, a BFA in musical theater and a Bachelor of Music and Vocal Performance. So
Nice.
That's where I have. And then out of college, I taught high school chorus for a year, which is very odd, or almost a year.
I am like freaking out. We're 5 minutes into this thing and I'm like, what in the actual heck? That's crazy because my high school choir teachers were some of the most influential people in my life.
Yes,
like
me
public
too.
high school choir theater, well, any high school choir theater. And I oftentimes think about that in my own position and our positions, but that is so cool. Yeah. I did not know that.
Yeah. It was really, I didn't have a teaching degree. It was actually the teacher that was my course teacher when I was in high school. And she had to go out on a medical leave and she was like, hey, you just graduated. You want to come long-term sub? And I was like, sure. And it was the most kind of transformative year of my life. And I always knew I would go back into education at some point. I'm still friends with some of those kiddos like on social media. And it's funny because I was 22 and some of them were 18. So we weren't really that, far apart. And so we kind of grew that year together and it was really amazing. And so I always knew after my professional kind of time was done, I would go back into education because it was
awesome.
It definitely like lit that flame of like wanting to work with kiddos.
Let's just say your professional time is not done. Okay.
No, well, that's true. Yes, but
Not
I meant
done.
like touring and being out in the world and
all right.
the New York thing, all of that. Yeah, like the hardcore pushing, pounding the pavement to get it. Yeah.
How did you go from that performance kind of side of theater into the technical side of theater? How did that come to be?
So I did a lot of technical theater in college. It was definitely something that I was attracted to in school and kind of thought, I never liked auditioning. I never liked that part. I think a lot of actors don't like that, but I really had an aversion to it. I was like, I just want to be liked for me. I don't want to have to go in the room.
Yeah.
And I was chubby and a nerd and like just kind of awkward at times. And really goofy. So
we like that about you.
Yeah, and now it seems to work okay. But, as a 22-year-old moving to New York, I was like, it just wasn't for me. So I started, I did an internship actually at Virginia Stage Company in Norfolk, Virginia, where I grew up in Virginia Beach. So it was very close. And we were technical theater interns, but we also would get up at like 5 a.m. and do children's theater at different schools around Virginia. So we would like get up, pack a van with our set, drive, perform, and do all the technical stuff. And then in the afternoons, we would do rehearsal with the professional company as technicians. So I was like on the fly rail, I stage managed and did all those things. And I was like, oh, I really love this. But the real transition, I went to New York. I did the audition thing. I was cast in the National Tour of Oliver. and which was produced by Cameron McIntosh. It was like a big deal. It had just come over from the West End. They're actually reviving it right now.
Yeah.
So I auditioned for that and I got cast. And so I went out for 2 years on the road as a performer in the ensemble. Met my husband on that tour 20 years ago, almost this fall.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And then at the end of that, it was kind of that like, okay, do I go back to New York and audition, or do I really go with where my heart was technical theater? I was always I was like the stage manager. My husband's a carpenter, was a stagehand. And so I applied to be like the child wrangler on the national tour of Annie.
Yeah.
And did that for about a month. And then the ASM left and they were like, would you like to be the ASM? And that started. So that was like end of 2004-ish. And then I toured till almost 2012 as a stage manager.
I find it so cool. I think, and oftentimes we'll kind of circle back in our conversations on this podcast to things for our students to hear. I love so much. Well, I love all of our stories, and I love hearing, like, I didn't go into high school, I'm speaking for you, Kelly, and like, I'm going to be a professional stage manager, and I have one path. And I think it's so important for students, kids, even people, young adults who are in this industry to know, like, hey, your path can go so many different ways. Like what you just said in 3 sentences, like I was in a Broadway touring company as a performer. Then I became a child wrangler. And then 5 minutes later, I was a stage manager or assistant stage manager. Like that's the way I think in the world things happen. And I think it's so important for young people to hear that because they get so, I have my path, I have my direction and my plan, and it's the only way, you know, and then they can look up, you know, our students look up to us. I know they do. And they really enjoy hearing like, oh my gosh, that's how you got here, you know, and you're so successful in what you do and you're so great at what you do. And I did not know that you were a performer. And I love that is such a huge part of understanding theater. And I'm sure that helps you in your technical side of what you do, having been a performer, right?
It does. And I think that one thing I try to, when I am teaching, especially stage management, it's kind of a great bridge between the two worlds of the performance world and the designers and the technicians. I'm not a technician. I can fire up a lighting board. I can, you know, but if you were to say, hey, could you program these cues? It would take me a while.
Like, no,
I'd be like, and this one goes, is this the purple one? I'm not a technician
shiny
at
thing.
all.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I think that the stage management is such a good blend of all of the areas of theater. And one thing I teach a lot is that you have to have, I feel like good stage managers have to have a respect for performers. And that it's a relationship that I think is challenging in young people because there's, especially in conservatory style education, you're often separate. And then you come together for a show and there's an odd dynamic or balance between the two kind of behind the scenes and in front of the scenes groups. And I try to tell them that in the professional world, that divide is much less. There's not such a divide because you're really working together for a common goal. It's just because of how school is, you're very separate like during the day. But when you're doing a professional show, you're with each other all day long. Right. So I think having a respect and admiration for the performers from a technical side is something that happened because I was an actor or a performer at one point in my life. I have a great respect for what they do out on the stage. So sometimes I feel like we just need to get that reversed in our young people so that there's an admiration on both sides and they understand what we both do.
That's what I was going to say. Is like we're missing that mutual respect and admiration that is so important.
I think too, Christopher and I have done a million shows together, it feels like.
Yeah.
And Kelly, we're on our way there. I'm so excited.
Yeah, totally.
But I think having people like ourselves in the mix where we understand that at our level and we're able to try and pass that down to the students. I think even as a director, as an educator, as a teacher in our specific school, and in my theater company, I try very hard to make an effort to teach the performers that too, because I think it's the exact same thing on the other end. Our students have worked for 8 to 10 weeks on their own, and they've created these bonds and these relationships. And then we get these amazing tech students that come in and they're just like trying to catch up you know? And I constantly am trying to remind our students or my kids at my theater company, like, hey, these people are making your show happen. And they're trying to acclimate and jump into what we've created, and trying to bridge that gap is really huge. And I do think, having worked professionally as well as a performer, some of my best friends were our tech guys or our people running sound, because you have to rely on them and you have to trust them and you have to count on them. And I think you make those relationships early on in the process, right? And I think I love that that's something you want to really instill in young people, because I do agree that is what makes a great stage manager, but also any sort of great production and design, you know, student, employee, person working on a show, is that camaraderie, respect, and understanding.
Absolutely. It really is a true collaboration. And I think that sometimes that's lost in the school environment, because these kids are under so much pressure already with their classes. And, you know, it's different for an adult to stay at rehearsal till 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. But when you have a child who's doing that, it's a lot. So I think that sometimes we lose sight of that part of it, because you're just trying to get through the day the best that you can, and you're supporting your students all around. But you definitely, I think, of our experiences, you definitely, the ones that we've had so far this year have been, you know, very respectful of our P&D kids. But you know, it will take time. And I think too, our students, trying to create our world at OSHA more like the professional world a little bit more, you know, and I think that will help as well. This kind of, you know, having students join our rehearsal process earlier so they feel integrated is a huge part of building that camaraderie and building that show vibe that you have.
Totally.
You know, so that you in that show and you really feel like you've done it together.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I was going to ask is, can you talk a little bit about not just OSHA, but like a school environment where you do have student techs coming into the process? How does that differ from the professional world? Like, you know, I know we have them join the last week or so, like basically just our tech week, right? And I know that it's definitely earlier in the professional world, but can you just talk a little bit about how that differs?
Yeah, I think that the biggest difference in the school environment is that we have our tech kids joining Tech Day 1. And in the professional world, your stage managers, you might meet you really only meet your crew during tech. They're not in the rehearsal room, but you have a set of stage managers, 2 or 3 or 4, depending on the size of the show, who know that show backwards and forwards. And so that when they get to tech, they're handing cue sheets to all the crew. They're really in charge of making sure those scene changes happen, that the mics are ready to go, that the, follow spots are powered up and standing by. And we lose a little bit of that because of how crazy our schedule is, that, like at OSHA in particular, the P&D kids have already done over 50 shows this year, where some conservatories, they did their 2 or 3 big shows, which is awesome, but we've staffed over 50.
That is crazy.
Time. It is crazy. It's so crazy. I'm like, what is happening here? But, they don't have time because they've just come off another show, some of them. So we need to, I think that in education, we need to, any kind of conservatory style or even any theater education, you have to go back to the basics of what is the point of doing this in high school or in junior high. What are we trying to get? And you have to ask yourself that question. And I've been doing that a lot this year as someone new to OSHA. Kind of what is important here? Is it that they do 50 shows, or is it that they do 30 shows that are really meaningful?
Yeah. And
so I think that's where we are. So I think in education, the difference is the amount of commitment that you're able to make to a show. Whereas in the professional world, you're getting paid to do, that's all you're doing for that time, for the most part, for those 6, 7, 8 weeks, depending on how long your contract is. That's all. That's your full-time job. Here, you're just split into 100 different pieces.
Yeah.
What do you think as a professional stage manager? So before education or school or teaching. Now I know you taught choir earlier on. What do you think is the hardest part of being a stage manager? What's the most difficult part of being a stage manager?
I think you are a manager, number one. And that is hard because much like a teacher, you find yourself in positions that are uncomfortable. that maybe don't align with your personal values, that, you're dealing with people, working with people from all over the world sometimes, especially for like a Cirque du Soleil situation. Our entire creative team, most of them didn't speak English.
Wow.
And so then you're dealing with cultural barriers and you're trying to communicate safety and you're like, this is difficult. We had Cirque takes very good care of your non-English speaking people, but then also they're the majority and we're the minority. So it's just interesting. So as a stage manager, I think the most challenging thing is just holding true to who you are as a human, and then also trying to keep the best interest of every department at the forefront of your decision-making processes. You're having to make sure you're, supporting the crew, supporting the cast, and you're the director's right hand. Really, anything that they need, you should be able to jump. And sometimes it's just a crazy balancing act. And trying to just kind of keep it all straight is difficult at times.
I had, I'm going to tell you a quick story. I grew up doing a bunch of theater at Moonlight Amphitheater in San Diego. It's kind of where I did my youth theater, and I met so many of my lifelong friends and went on to do a lot of the professional shows there. And we had a stage manager, and I'm going to call him out on here. I don't know if he listens to our podcast, Stanley Cohen, who was...
Stanley, yeah.
Do you know Stanley?
I don't know him personally, but we are in the same regional theater circuit. So yeah.
In terms of stage managers, I put Stanley Cohen on like a pedestal. That man, I remember as a teenager into young adulthood just being like, this guy is running a tight ship. He had everything organized. It was just, and it made me as a performer feel safe and prepared and confident. And I, to this day, just remember being like, dude, that's what's like holding it all together, and we could do all of our stuff. But if something went wrong we got a million stories of those, right? And Stanley Cohen, he's always there, just like bringing everybody back together and making sure everything was correct. And I admired him so much for that. I was like, dude, I don't know how he does this job. And at Moonlight Amphitheater, it's like a summer stock, and you are doing 4 to 5 full productions, weeks long at a time. And I'm like, how does this guy do this? And even in the rehearsal room, you're outside, right? And even in the rehearsal room, just like, I don't know, I was always in awe of him. And I think like it really gave me a great example of like what a professional stage manager should be, and kind of that like taking care of everyone. It was awesome. That's also, for me, that's my favorite part of it all, and why I think it translated well into education. Because at the heart of it, you really are kind of the center of the center of the universe. The stage managers. But the actors, especially once you get to tech, the actors typically especially in a professional production, don't really go to the director much anymore. The director's running around doing all of the things, and they come to the stage manager. The crew comes to the stage manager. The designers come to the stage manager, and then you're disseminating information like crazy all throughout the day and in every moment, and you're always thinking ahead. But at the heart of it, you really are taking care of your people, and taking care of the whole production team, including the actors and the wardrobe and everybody who's come together to make it. It's one of my favorite parts is really taking care of the people and trying to think ahead about what the needs are. Making sure that the director comes in for the first day of rehearsal or the first day of tech and the room is set. It might be wrong because the director's now like, no, I don't want to do it that way. But at least they've seen that we have tried. And even down to knowing what your actors need in their day. And I think that's important. What do they need to make this day successful for them? Is it a bunch of Ricola in the green room? Yeah, sometimes it is just some Ricolas. That's all they need. And then sometimes it's, this is getting a little heavy, but, I have been at rehearsal processes where actresses were going through a miscarriage in the middle of rehearsal. I've been where we've lost parents in the middle of rehearsal. A car accident has happened in the middle of rehearsal, and it's you. It's obviously the directors, everybody's there, but it's really the stage manager to decide how you move forward. Sometimes I'm outside counseling an actor and saying, hey, like, let's get through this. What do we need? And sometimes it's knowing when to break, knowing when to take some time out of the room, knowing when to ask the director for a one-on-one, and knowing that timing and that balance in the rehearsal day where it's appropriate to do that. And it's really fun.
It's not those horrible things that happen, but the being no, that was horrible. No, but like taking care.
Yes, of people. It's a specific personality for sure, and I love that. Yeah, that is exactly. I don't know. You're like the person. You know, once that show's up and running, and you're in that tech moment, you're the person for sure.
Well, and that's what I also.
You were going to ask something. Like, I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, like in a touring production, like when it goes, when they bring in the creative team, there's the director, there's the music director, there's all the people. The stage manager's there. What does that process look like from getting it off the ground onto getting it on the road? And once it's on the road, like the director doesn't stay with it, right? Or do they ever? Right?
Nope.
But you have a company manager too to help with a tour like that, right? Which is helpful, Kelly.
We do. Yep. So some shows now they'll have like a resident director that travels with the company. Some of the bigger shows, I even think Moulin Rouge might have a resident director out there now with them. Some of the big dance shows always had like a resident director, but typically on the show, I would say all the tours that I did, we never had a resident director. So the PSM, the production stage manager, kind of assumes the role of director. We maintain the artistic integrity of the show. We note the actors. If a new actor comes in, we put them in. We do the whole put-in process. So that's where that director and stage manager relationship during rehearsal comes in. It's very important because I want to hear all of the director's intentions for the role. And so that when I go to put in an actor without the director, that I'm giving the same notes that the director would have given. But back to the question about getting a show up and running, it happens really fast. We basically two to 3 weeks of rehearsal in New York, usually 42nd Street Studios. That's pretty much where all the tours we rehearse. And you're brought together. You sometimes do a table read, and then you're just 8 hours a day, staging and choreograph and everything.
I'd be dead.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And the stage managers were there early and then we're there late. But the cool thing about touring too, a lot of times you have a prop person in the room with you in those rehearsals. So you're not having to like, hey, use this piece of paper. This will be a book in 3 weeks. No, you actually usually have the pieces and the props, which is so helpful. But it's a very fast process. I mean, some of them we rehearsed a little longer, but generally it's a 2 to 3 week process. And then you go to tech. Typically we fly out to a city, some sort of small city. Oliver, we teched in like Saginaw, Michigan. We used to call, never mind, I'm not gonna say what we call it. Somebody might be from Saginaw. Very small little town in Michigan, but cheap for labor and for teching a show and putting people up in hotels. And but then we teched Shrek for 3 months in Chicago because we had the writers with us, Janine Tesori and David Lindsay-Abaire were with us during tech, and they rewrote the show. So we were there for like I think it was like a 2-month tech. But generally that we do that, we get it up and running in like 2 weeks of tech, maybe 3 if it's a technically complex show. And then we're off and running. And I think the thing that most of us touring people who toured for a long time, the best part is the going to different cities. It's like you get to the city by Friday night. We open Tuesday. By Friday night, I'm like, let's go to the next one. We did it here. Check. Let's go.
Hey, Kelly, I have a question about. I've always wondered this. My sister, my younger sister, has done several professional Broadway tours, but I've always heard the stories from an actor's standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. So I've always wondered. I know, and it depends on the show. And I'll use Segerstrom or Pantages or these places that we see a lot around here. Some shows will bring their own deck. Some shows will bring, obviously, their pieces. In terms of lighting and sound, how does that transfer from theater to theater? So, like, we're in, San Diego, and then we're in Arizona. Obviously, the theater in San Diego is going to have a different lighting system or whatever it may be, and sound. How does that transition happen?
So typically we do an advance. So the head carpenter, head electrician, head sound people, before we get to a city, they're in communication with the heads of the venue. So the actual, what we call house heads, the people who are actually like the union stagehands who work at that venue. But we have a package. And so they call and they talk on the phone and they're like, okay, well, we need, this amount of lights on this, line. And if for some reason the theater doesn't have a standard setup that works we also travel pieces of lighting, like all kinds of lighting equipment and sound. All of our dimmer racks we bring in, And so we basically have trucks full of lighting and sound equipment.
That's crazy. And then you have what, like
so
a
basically
day to put it in, to install?
Yep.
That's nuts.
So we like patch into their system. We'll use what they have. Sometimes I think that if I remember correctly, that there were times where we came in and it was an empty, like we hung everything. So just depending on the show or how big it was.
Gas.
You know, we went
That's stressful.
I know it's so much. So when I toured on Rent, you know, Rent is a smaller show. It's got rock and roll lights. You know, it's not super intricate. But then you tour on something right, with something like, you know, My Fair Lady or Shrek, where it's a big show. We had lots of automating moving parts. So we, you know, would hang our lights. And typically the schedule, you know, we would load out on a Sunday night for a show. The crew loads out all night long, gets on a plane Monday morning, goes to the city, starts loading it in. Sometimes, depending on how long the load-in takes, a lot of times it was like a 5 to midnight or 5 to 10 on Monday night.
Oh my gosh.
Just went crazy. I'm like, tear it down on Tuesday, and we would do an 8-hour day, sound check at 5 o'clock, and then we roll that night, and it's insane.
So the actors need to just quiet it down then, right? When they're like, we're so tired, I would be like, hey, friends.
Yep. And I will say touring, a lot of touring actors don't complain. Yeah. I will say a lot of the touring actors that, you know, don't complain. They're like, no, we're good. Because they get to go home Sunday night after the show. They get a Monday travel day. They relax. And we're on the, you know, all the crew.
And then they get there and they're like, thank
in the morning.
You so much, crew. We love you.
They are. They're so good.
Oh, man.
No, I was just going to say I was very lucky. Like most of the people I toured with in the years that I toured were pretty fantastic and still lifelong friends to this day. The actors, the crew, everybody. And the crew, we toured with the same crew also over and over and over. So we were like, oh, hey, yeah, we were on the tour 2 years ago together. Hey, welcome back. So
you're like a family. Yeah. I mean, that's
it is.
Like,
it is. And it's still a
lot
family.
of time together.
Yep.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
I mean, I met my husband on the road.
So long.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you tour for so long, like, how does, like, you said you toured for what, basically 8 years? 10 years? I can't
almost
do math.
10. Almost 10. I don't mean either.
Okay.
Almost 10, yeah. I know, math is hard.
So, what was that like, spending your entire life on the road for 10 years, essentially?
It was interesting. You know, I think I was very lucky because I did meet my husband on the road. So on our first tour, so 6 months into the tour, we started dating. And so we were able to tour. We pretty much toured together on every tour. We spent 1 year apart because I went on Rent and he went on the Frost Nixon play. And he was a head carpenter. So he ran the crew and I was stage manager. And so we had a great life. We got 2 dogs. We toured with our dogs. And I drove a lot because I love to fly. Flying is fine, but it was much easier with all the crap that I had to drive. So I'd drive a lot of the time. If the jump was too long, I'd put my car on a toy hauler thing and it would take it to the next city. But it's interesting, you know, it's the biggest shock of touring is coming off the road and then like having to make your bed every day because there was housekeeping that did that for 10 years. So you're like,
right.
This is
that
terrible.
Is so what my sister, Kelly, my sister says the exact same thing. She is like,
so true.
Oh my gosh, I had to like throw my trash away. I was like, girlfriend, come on now.
Yep. I'm like, I got to clean my own bathroom. What is that?
Kelly, so I do this to people and I know it's like you probably can't choose one or you might have a million stories or whatnot, but is there like one specific, like something crazy happened on stage or funny or scary or a situation that you remember very clearly as a stage manager that's like a moment? And can you tell us about it?
Well, there are a lot, you know, obviously things happen, you know, My Fair Lady tour, they brought the set over from London, from the West End. It was too heavy for the automation systems in the United States. And every time I called the show, we had to stop the show. Like it wasn't me. It was like, it felt like every 3 shows that I called, it would like, we'd have to stop. I think I stopped that show like 17 times. But
oh my gosh.
My favorite story is an actually actor story. And it doesn't involve me. And it just is so funny because I think it's I tell this in my stage management classes because I think it's funny that actors are, as much as production and design We are very much planners. We have to be thinking ahead all of the time and kind of, solving problems before they're problems. Well, actors also don't always have that luxury if it's happening like out on stage. They're just, kind of think. And I talk about this because I think it's important. It talks about that admiration. So we were on the Oliver tour, and Nancy and Bill Sykes, the two characters, Bill Sykes kills Nancy. Spoiler alert. But he kills her. And
in case you don't know Oliver, guys.
Yeah, in our production, there was like a bridge that was suspended above the stage, and he would kill her with a club. He'd like beat her up on the thing, and it was all shadowy and lighting. And so he would hit the club on the side of the bridge, making it sound like it was her head, which is terrible. But that's how Bill Sykes kills her. And this one night, I guess the prop wasn't set, something, which is also a stage manager story, although I wasn't a stage manager. The prop would have been set if it was me. I'm kidding. But joking. Jokes, props,
you're
love you.
not, because it would be set.
But so somehow it was an understudy on for Bill Sykes. He goes up to the thing. There's only the two of them on stage. There's like a bright light, and he's supposed to beat her. And you see this understudy, he's like looking around, and he's saying his lines, but obviously the club is not there. So the understudy decides that he's going to stomp her to death. And not only does he stomp her to death, he gets very carried away, and he starts backing up and then running and gah, gah. And I will never forget that moment. And I remember because after that part, we all come on stage, and I remember just standing in the wings he went ham on her with his foot, and he's like, ah, yeah, and I'm like, and the stage manager's running. Wow. She's got the club. I'm like, it's too late. Let it go. Just you stomping her to death. And
he's in full karate mode. You totally can't stop him now.
And we
oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
It was awful. And we still the cast, we're in a Facebook group together. Hey guys, hey Oliver peeps, love y'all. But we talk about that all the time because it's still just the funniest. And we're just watching this happen, and the light is just horrible. And we're like, and the beating of the club is bad enough, but he stomped her to death with his foot. And our girl who played Nancy, who was just the most beautiful actress, just so amazing. I could just her face up there I'm not you're don't really stomp me.
What is happening?
And
oh my
it's
gosh,
just fun, but that's so fun in a way.
Those stories though, I say it all the time, and now that I've told you, Kelly, you'll hear me. But I'm constantly ooh, that's going in my book. Yeah. Ooh, that's going in my book. I live and I love those types of silly, ridiculous moments. And I have so many I think just as a theater person you do, and then as a teacher, obviously more, but that's a moment. He had to make a choice.
He did.
He was going to kill her with so
I mean, we were just
I could just picture
her,
it.
Something I don't know, but it was just, and it went on for way too long, and we're it's poor understudy, the timing is, it's challenging when you have it's just, the whole thing was just, and it was just hilarious. I just remember us all standing in the wing together about to enter this is terrible.
And it's true, right? You have to think on your feet, obviously improv as a performer, but as a stage manager too. And you were talking about having to hold the show when you're doing My Fair Lady. And one of my really good girlfriends was the company manager for Spider-Man Turn on the Dark, whatever it was on Broadway.
Well, that'll do it.
Oh my gosh. She just, the stories of her, we, even in previews, they couldn't, just technically it was so overwhelming. And she's we'd be we're in a hold as the Spidey's swinging across the audience.
I'm fine, guys. I'm fine.
It's cool. But it's true. And I think that's also the beauty, I think, of live theater. And I love telling my students, I like when things go wrong.
Me too.
I think I love it because it's how they learn. Now, I don't like if someone gets injured.
No.
But I like it when things don't go perfectly, because then they learn how to think in the moment. I always tell this story. So at Moonlight, I was doing Music Man, and Adam Lambert was my dance partner.
Nice.
And now Adam Lambert was not a dancer. He wanted to not be in every single number. And I was well, I'm your dance partner and I'm a dancer. So we're going to be in every number, and do not mess this up for me.
This is my time.
At one point,
my time.
In Shapoopy, they put us right front and center. And we practiced, and we were so excited. And in the show, I was wearing a fall, this really beautiful long fall. And we had to do a lift. And somehow my fall got stuck under Adam's arm. And then when I fan kicked out, it was still in his arm and I had no hair. And we had this moment where we both looked at each other and we're like, so we have options, right?
Right.
We freak out. We throw the hair in the orchestra pit. We dance with it. And I'll never forget, Adam just put it around his neck like a scarf. And we're just shapoopy, shapoopy.
Amazing.
I'm like, those moments though, like, I see kids, they drop a pencil on stage and it's as if the world is on fire. I'm like, you guys, it's okay. Like, things happen and we have to then make a choice. And it's how you become a better performer. It's how you become a better stage manager or crew member. You know, when things don't go right and the crew has to kind of jump in and, okay, on the next scene, we got to go get whatever fell or whatever. I think it's such a great way for them to learn. And I'm constantly like, guys, things are going to go wrong and let's use that, you know, use it to use it to
I mean, it's the beauty of
if you're
live
an
theater.
actor and something happens, why don't you just act like a normal human and pick it up?
Right.
What do you do in your
because
everyday
as an
life?
actor, but your brain, and I see this with kids, and you can see it too, Christopher. I'm sure Kelly with your students too, or working on shows. There's different types of performers, right? So there's some performers where I'm like, oh, I can trust this kid. Maggie Giddon, for instance, who we'll have on in hopefully the coming weeks, one of our former students. I could trust that kid on stage to just do anything. I wouldn't, if the whole theater came caving in, Maggie would still be singing on my own. You know what I mean? Like, she just, there are those kids.
Yep.
When I went and saw Something Rotten a few weeks ago, Christopher, I felt like the lead in Something Rotten was that performer. I could sense this kind of confidence in that student. I don't know him at all, but I feel like it's that, not an
He's
actor you
great.
can trust, but somebody that you're like, you are comfortable enough,
Of course,
in what's happening.
Yep.
But then there are not only students, but just performers in general who they have done it their way. They can't. And if something goes out of their little track, they can't act like a normal person because that's not in their track. You
Totally.
know? And you're like, you're just a person. And it's very, very difficult. And I think it is interesting. It's a personality thing for sure.
it is, and it's funny as a stage manager. I mean, I think probably one of the most common things that happens is something drops on stage, and as a stage manager, you're calling the show, and you're like, just pick it up, just pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. I'm staring at
Yes.
it. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up.
because the
And
entire
the
audience is staring
you're
at
staring at it, and an actor, some of them will literally just walk and step over it every time, and I'm like, you're just kick it. Move it around with their foot. I'm like, what are you? Just pick it up, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I swear, there's got to be like a gabillion headset recordings of stage managers going, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. Can someone ask? Hey, backstage? Can someone ask someone coming on to please pick that thing up? No one picking it up.
Yes.
They're gonna dance around it.
Why?
They're gonna
It's a
not
specific,
acknowledge it. I'm like,
feeling.
it is. It's like
They
we can't
cannot,
do it.
It's like, it's out of my thing. It's
Yep.
not my thing.
And
I can't touch it.
brilliant
I can't do
actors.
it.
I mean, people who are like famously brilliant won't do it,
can't
and
do
you're
it.
like, just pick it. So I'm staring
I
at
get
this
a lot of
handkerchief for
students
like 2
who-
hours. Like, what is happening?
Students who've come from like a dance background, so they're taught the opposite. Where if your hat falls off or a piece of your costume falls off in a dance competition or in a recital, you're taught to not do anything with it. You're taught to dance around it, dance on top of it, because you're not being a character, you're not in a scene, you're doing a dance performance. So a lot of my dancers, I have to retrain them to be like exactly what you said, Kelly. If you were to drop a handkerchief, a pencil, a book, whatever it may be in your real life, would you stand there and stare at it like it's going to eat you? Or would you pick it up?
Right.
You know?
It's really the
hard.
best.
Oh my
I don't
gosh,
know.
that's
I've
so
watched
funny.
people in real life do it, not going to lie.
Yeah, it's-
They'll just like look at what they dropped.
like my
I'm
children.
I literally
like
had
my
to
children.
do this. Yes. I'm like, I literally had to do this just like 2 weeks ago. Somebody
Yeah.
dropped something. I'm like, and they were just staring at it. I'm like, pick it up.
Right.
Just pick it up.
Yes.
Just pick it up.
Pick it up.
But also,
Kelly.
like, I
Oh,
want to
go
go
ahead.
back
Go
to
ahead.
the dance thing, Sharna, because I want to
Yeah.
ask about that. Like, because a lot of the times, at least from my experience in theater and stuff, like, it's always considered a safety issue for something that is not supposed to be there on the stage, especially during a dance number. So how do you think that works, and how do you think that became a thing for the dance
So
peoples?
I think two things. It depends on if you're in a competition, you're being judged and evaluated on your execution and your synchronicity and all that kind of stuff. If you go out of your way to do something to pick it up or throw it off or whatnot, that might affect your score. So I
Yes.
think at that point, it's just like, do your best. If you're in a dance recital, and this is just my experience, it could be different for different people. If you're in a dance recital, or if you're in a dance number in a musical, right? So that's a little different too. Like if you're in a scene and you drop your purse, pick it up or whatever. In a dance number in a musical, I teach my students, pick whatever it is up if you can keep it on your body. Like, do you remember in Anything Goes, Christopher, when Bella, they dropped the hat and she like doubled her hat?
Yes.
Yeah. So like my big thing is like, cool, if you have somewhere on your body, great, or throw it or pass it off. But I think with choreography, it's tricky because kids are like, I got to get in my spot and I'm on the 8 and I got to this and this is in the way. I think in the dance world, it's more just like if it is a safety issue and you can kick it off. I've seen kids kick it off or move it out of the way with their foot. But I think dancing around it as best you can. Just in terms of like the picture and not anybody doing something out of there.
Synchronicity, is that a word? Synchronicity?
Yeah.
I guess the
so.
synchronicity of the competition dance, I guess, makes sense.
Yeah.
But like anything in real life, anything in theater, real life, I'd rather, you be 3 seconds late to hit your mark and get that thing off the stage.
I'm the
and
exact
then you just
same way.
join. You're like, hey, hello, I'm here.
Right.
Because the audience is staring at it too. I mean, like that's the best part is that,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like burning like stage manager or like a director in the audience. Like they just happen to be there the night that everything's going to fall. And like, it's like, and all you can do is stare at it. You're just like, God, get it,
Pick it up.
please,
Pick
please.
it up.
So
Pick it up.
yeah, it's a funny thing.
I feel the same thing too, Kelly, and I don't know stage manager wise, but as a director, I always get irritated when people are on stage and they're in a scene or whatever, and they've clearly had a really fast costume change. And their collar's up and their hair's a mess. Like, if I was that actor, I'd be like, hey, my scene partner, let me fix your collar. Or hey, friend. And I'm like, people are looking at this actor as if they've just rolled out of a trash can and you're just like doing your love scene with them. You know what I mean? I'm like, fix it.
Like
Help
something's
them.
off here. Yeah, no, it's so true. It's like there might even be like, there should be like an entire podcast, like series dedicated to costumers and the things that go wrong in costume changes. Cause especially fast ones, it's so funny to like, you're like, oh, that's not, you're like wearing the wrong, okay, cool. That's not, okay.
We had a girl one time, Kelly, you'll think this is funny. Maggie, the girl we were just talking about, performer, we were doing Sideshow, and which I love that show.
Me
And she was one of the
too.
twins, and
Underrated.
lots of difficult
Underrated.
changes. It right? It's
Totally.
a good show.
I mean, Tunnel of Love is a little, but up until that point in the
It's
show,
true.
it's pretty good.
Good, that's true. She had an insane change to get out of a dress and put on like a pants suit, and her zipper got stuck, and so she comes out. Talk about the kid who's not going to let anything mess her up. She comes out and she has tucked this entire gown into her pantsuit. She looked like she gained 35 pounds.
They're
like
"What
between
happened here?"
scenes. And she zipped it up and it's all like poofy in her pants. Everyone's like, whoa. And she came
girl.
out, she did the whole scene. She didn't bat an eyelash. She
Heck
just
yeah.
rocked her scene with a full dress in her pants,
That's
man. It
amazing.
was so
That's
funny.
amazing.
Or shoes. I love when like shoes go flying.
Oh,
off
shoes
on
going
stage.
flying. Yes, for sure.
Right?
For sure. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Always the
so
best.
funny. Love it. Well, Kelly, is there anything else? I know we asked you a bunch of questions and I love you sharing. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about or share specifically in terms of stage management, education, teaching, kind of your philosophy, anything?
I mean,
that comes to mind?
I'm trying to think. No, I think that, I think we're in just such a cool position here. And to be able to work with students who, I was telling the kids yesterday, I met with all of the seniors yesterday, and we were talking about they can do so much more than I could have done at their age, especially in P&D, because I didn't have a technical high school background situation at all. But it's so amazing to be able to see kids do things that are so out of what would be a typical like student's comfort zone, if that makes sense. That our kiddos are designing and running boards and focusing lights and sewing and building full costumes, and I just feel really lucky to be a part of that. It kind of sounds silly, but it really is just watching them. And we did interviews with our seniors yesterday, and hearing them talk about what they've experienced in school and how it has affected their lives. Some of them, a lot of them are not going on to production and design anything after college, or after high school into college, which is totally fine. we have a student who's wants to go and be an aerospace engineer. And I was like, I don't even know what that really is. That's amazing. Right. Like, one's like, oh, I'm going for human biology. I'm like, what? They're just so smart. And so I think that, when you talk about education, it's so cool to be able to see kiddos do things that really ignite that passion in them at such a young age. And I don't know, I felt very lucky to be working in education in this time. And I think that as theater people, we have this amazing ability to connect and collaborate. And I'm really excited to continue that here at OSHA, or just in general in the world, that we are, helping young people kind of find something that, maybe takes them away from the craziness of the world right now.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's...
Well, they're lucky to have you, Kelly. And we are, and I will come full circle, because I will truly say I was very excited when I finally got to meet you. And even that first interaction, I was like, oh, this is the right fit for this position, number one, but also just that energy you had. And Christopher and I talked about it, because you jumped in like literally right into the mess of a million shows and things, and like from the fire hose. And I was like, she's cool. I remember telling Christopher, like, she's going to be great. So I'm super grateful that the kids have you, the students have you, our school has you, but that now we get to play.
I know.
And do fun things, right?
I'm grateful for you guys.
We appreciate you.
I mean, I felt very, very welcomed.
Good.
Good.
Yeah.
We had this whole discussion about how Sharn and I both met you individually. Like, we didn't even know the other person had met you. And then when you came up, it was like, I love Kelly. And the other one's like, I love Kelly.
I love you guys.
Well, I
like,
mean,
good.
so you're our people. You're one of
We're
our people. And
I love it.
yes. And, but we also just want to say thank you so much for taking time to come hang out with us and talk with us.
I have a feeling you'll be back. I have a feeling we'll find some sort of topic. We'll be like, oh, Kelly's got to chime in.
I love it.
If you'll have us.
Of course,
We would love to have
anytime.
you back.
This is so fun. You guys are so fun. So
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll see you in a short while.
Yes, I'm here now. I'm gonna check some emails and do the things we do in the morning.
And I'll see you in a little bit longer while.
A little longer.
But yes.
Well,
So, all right, everybody.
all right.
Thank you for joining us today. Please like and subscribe on YouTube if you're watching us. And if you're not watching us, come watch us. Check out all our information on uncommonpod.com. And on that note, I think we say Charnopher
Out.
Yeah, out. Perfect. Love it.
Kelly.
This concludes another episode of Uncommon Sense. If you're ready for more of this fresh, hilarious, and unique perspective on the world of entertainment, education, and life, be sure to subscribe right now to catch every episode. If you gasped, laughed out loud, or even snorted, share the show with your friends and aspiring entertainers because, let's be real, sharing is caring. For more Charnopher, tune in to their witty insights by checking out the website uncommonpod.com or connecting on social media. Tune in next week and get the real insider scoop on another episode of Uncommon Sense.